Hello, friends. Welcome to the Ancient Health Podcast, where East meets West. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Motley. Today, I have a very close friend of mine, Abi Fernandini. She is one of my closest friends, buddies, pals that worked with me originally at the Ancient Health Podcast when we had Courtney on and had the whole team together. She is an organic alternative health lifestyle writer. She is a mother that writes all things motherhood, which we're going to talk about today. She has her own clothing line. She does super great on social media, and she's always putting out good information, especially about the frequencies of clothes, which was really eye-opening to me when we did that a while back. But thanks so much, Abs, for coming on with me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here. We needed to have a meetup session, so we might as well make it a podcast, right?
That's true. Hey, it's all good. Okay, so you guys, for everybody out there, me and Abby are going to we'll have a conversation. So we don't want to bore anybody that's listening. I don't think it is, but I think people are really intrigued though with healthy lifestyle choices. If anybody out there is living in the fast-paced world of America, who's always on the go, we're always moving and grooving. We always have too much going with our adrenals. You and the whole fam, Rodrigo, Luca, Alessio, is that right? Alessio,
yep. He was born here.
You guys are down. I'm not trying to give away locations, but you probably see it on Rodrigo's and your feed. But you guys are down in South America. How's the pace? So we want to talk about health. I want to talk anything you want to talk about, Ab. But how is it down in South America and everything? Since you guys moved.
So we're down in Peru and we absolutely love it. So my husband is from Peru. I've obviously lived in the US my whole life. He has lived in the US for the last, 7 or 8 years, up until recently when we were making a big decision as a family. Just because I think you can kind of see with the US, there's just been so many things that have happened as far as the food system and pharma. And it was okay, for our kids growing up right now, is there a place that we can be that is potentially a little bit less costly to raise healthy, happy kids, and a place that is kind of abundant in amazing food, and also kind of has a slightly different culture in the sense of it's very family unit oriented. So the whole family, all generationally speaking, they typically live together in the multi-generation, and you know all about that, Mots, but it's multi-generational living. It's much more family oriented, I would say, in a lot of ways. And it's extremely culturally rich. And so we had just, decided to move down to Peru, to my husband's homeland. He has a good amount of business down here as it pertains to just our family dynamics in general. So it made a lot of sense. So we're down here now. We absolutely love it. Food is amazing. And, we'll be back to the US. We'll be back. And I love America. But right now, it was this just makes so much sense for our family.
Do you find when you're there that your stress levels are lower?
Yes, 100%. Because there's a few reasons I would say for that. One, I have help here, which I don't necessarily have as much of in the US. I have help with my kids in the sense of we've created this nice family dynamic where I've got my suegra, who's like my mother-in-law. She's here quite a bit and she helps me with the kids. And I also have a wonderful lady that works with me who is also helping me where I'm very hands-on, but I have a unit of women who are extremely maternal that are able to help me with the kids to where I don't feel like I'm running this fast pace all alone with just me and my husband trying to manage the kids. And that's been really, really helpful for my own sake. I can go take a shower if I really need to and not be worried about putting the baby down and then also worried about my toddler potentially taking the baby off the bed. You know what I'm saying? So there's that dynamic of having a village of women to help me right now in this moment in time that I really need it with 2 kids that are 2 years and under, right? 2 years and 2 months. Alessio's 2 months and Luca's 2 years. And then also as far as it goes, there's Alessio. Speaking of which,
Hey, buddy.
He'll join us occasionally on this podcast. But yeah, and then as far as food goes, I mean, Peru has some of the most amazing microclimates in the world. It has some of the most biodiverse terrain in the world, because we have the Andes Mountains, we have the jungle like the Amazon, we have the coast, and then we have every microclimate in between the jungle, the Andes, and the coast. And so the food here is some of the best in the world. It's number one for gastronomy in the world. So you get some of the best restaurants in the world. And again, it's just because the products are so pure. They're so amazing. And everything here is local. Every product, pretty much with the exception of a few, are sourced from Peru or grown in everything's grown in Peru. So I mean, I've made a huge difference in my own personal health.
That's what I was going to ask, because is there a lot of mineral content because of the mountains and such, and because it's so clean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have some of the best salt mines in the world here in the mountains. You get Canadian salt here. And yeah, again, the Andes is extremely rich with that. We have some of the best varieties of tropical fruit in the world here. So we have crazy fruits that many people have probably not even heard of, like chirimoya, lucuma, sacha tomate, like crazy fruits that, again, very, very specific regions. So yeah, the food quality here is another level. And it's also, I don't think about being healthy with my food now. Whereas in the US, I had to actively go to the grocery store and say, I need to look at every single ingredient in the products I'm buying. I need to make sure my products are organic. I need to this, I need to that. And there's this surmounting headache that tends to happen when you're doing that, and also worried about your kids and what are they eating. And so here, that's not really a conversation. That's not a topic of discussion. It's just, I'm going to the mercado. I'm going to go buy my products, my plantains, my this, my that. There's some things that I probably would want to buy organic here because they still use pesticides on certain crops, etc. But they have much more strict regulations around a lot of it because they want to protect the terrain here, because it's extremely unique, and like I said, the microclimates are heavily protected in Peru. So yeah, that's a major difference. Major difference.
Do you, when you move to an area where things are protected, in the sense, like, the crops, how they're grown, the traditions of seeing things grow and trying to preserve.
Totally.
Do you see like their culture as well? Like, you don't have to worry about going to an area and reading all the labels. I want to talk about two parts. This part about your health, like, that comes in through your food, and also the emotional health and stability and support by people around you that help you. But you find, like, we're out here bashing America or the United States. What we're saying is, with food sources, and they're not getting that vibe at all. I just want people to know that, like, when we talk about this, like, you have to not worry about it. And you're eating the foods. Are the people there generally, I would say, more healthy in the way they are, or they feel like they're less sick rates out there?
Do you want to know what's so interesting is, like, it's very, very dependent on where you are in Peru. So the city centers are incredibly westernized, just like the rest of the world. Like, Lima is a city center where there's a really broad spectrum of poverty to wealth. And so you kind of see this huge, huge, broad spectrum of people. Like, you can see obesity really creeping in to these city centers. Specifically, Lima is the one I'm most familiar with. So a lot of people are, on this go in Lima, where they are now resorting to Western foods. Because again, they've started to import a lot of just, stuff that's processed, extremely processed food. So you see in Lima in particular, you see it being extremely westernized, obesity's rising really quickly. And some of those, genuine, some of those general markers you can tell are changing. But then if you look outside of Lima into more rural areas, down south in the jungle, in the mountains, you'll see that they are extremely traditional with how they're eating and preparing their foods a lot of times. So you don't see, I would say you don't see the same, things like obesity and chronic illness, etc., that you're seeing now in Lima City Center. Those are much, much, much less in the outer parts, the more rural areas. And, I'd say the average Peruvian eats much better than the average American. And I can tell you the wealth gap is pretty prominent between those two. But the average Peruvian, for example, in a household would eat a couple of chicken thighs for lunch, maybe eggs and some rice. And that would be their lunch. And that's considered like kind of a pollo a la brasa or arroz con pollo. Those are two very like homey style dishes that, the average Peruvian can make all week, every week. They're eating the collagen, they're eating the ends of they're eating everything of the chicken. And they're getting their organs, and beef heart is really common here. It's a considered like I don't want to say like it's just a very common food. And then in the U.S.,
if
you were to buy it,
over there, like something
expensive. Yeah. So that's their major differences in that sense is like, the average Peruvian is definitely much less well off than the average American, but they're eating much better. And they're going through and preparing their food because they're living in multi-generational households. So you typically have a mother or grandmother working together to prepare food for the family or for the husband who may go to work, like because they don't want to go buy the food out because it costs more money, right? Versus the U.S., it's typically the opposite.
It is true. It's like that's another aspect I really like to talk about because many people that are listening, when you said that, if you literally want to take a shower without, being interrupted by your child, I understand that's a big thing that people come in and they have those concerns with a mother, it's too much to do. And do you feel like that's one thing that's missing from, the U.S., the American culture is the idea that cultures, multi-generational cultures are, in those areas it's the norm is to have a unit, like a beehive unit, if that I can say that everybody's kind of supporting. Do you feel that's what makes their family unit stronger? Do you feel like there's a big strength in that there?
Definitely. I feel like it is. And again, when you look at Lima, which is a very westernized large city, we have 11 million people living here. So it's compatible to New York City's population. When you look at Lima, that family unit is starting to break down as well. You can see it. It's happening in the city center. But then outside of Lima, and I wouldn't say that's the case for everything, but it's you can tell that Western culture is really, really making an impact on the city center. But then when you go outside of Lima, again, to the north, to the south, where my husband is from, Pimentel, Chiclayo, it's in the north. It's extremely centered around multi-generational living, and it's just about breaking up the load. And the other thing too that I think is really cool is that the kids are extremely integrated into what their parents are doing for a living. So I love to use this example. There's these little places. Well, there's these places called menus that you go and you can get a good meal of the day for 10, 12, 15 soles, just depending on like where you are. And it's just like, typically it can, like in Lima, it can be, all different types of people have menus. But then in some of the places in the north, they open their homes up and they create these menus. So you have the mother and the abuela, the grandmother, cooking in the kitchen. The kids are playing on the floor right outside of the kitchen. Maybe one of the older ones is helping, and they're serving people for lunch in their home, opening up their home, having a couple tables for lunchtime. And that's one of the many businesses they have. So, and then you see that, and the kids are, very integrated there. They're with their family, they're with their mom. Maybe they're helping out. Maybe again, if they're young enough to not be in school or whatever the case may be. But it's a very integrated family unit that, the kids are around that type of stuff. And then the same thing, like if you've got, if you go to the mercado, right, each, person has their own stand, they're selling their different things. It typically tends to become a family business. So the kids
Mhm.
are really there from a young age in these mercados and mercaditos, and they're sitting, and then when they get old enough, sometimes they're also learning the business and they're also selling stuff. And if they're old enough to help their mom, sometimes they're running the stands. So you kind of see
Mhm.
that progression as well, where the kids tend to be very integrated into whatever the family business is. That's something that I've seen. And then that also helps the load, right? Of the mother sharing the load with the grandmother, and then the dads and the uncles are kind of in and out of the house. And, it's much differently distributed than what we do in the US, for
Do
sure.
you, when you find, I mean, okay, this is no knock on our families because I'm not talking about
Of
your family.
course.
I'm not talking about my family. Well, I mean, I can talk about my family if I want. So what are we talking about? But do you, I do see a big, strong movement in the last, 20 years. I know I can't believe I was saying that. Like
Mhm.
it's, 20 years. Heavens to Betsy abs. I'm getting older. But do you, we see people, and it's really important to me that people do have a cohesiveness in their family, but there is a general stigma, that's the word, that, once your parents are getting older, in this US especially, that they're like, oh, the mother and dad have to fend for themselves. I think probably
Right.
because there's so much money you have to make. That's one aspect. I don't think this is the only, that
Is.
you work so hard. You're like, man, it takes a lot of money to live here in the United States. And then it's like, then I'm going to have to take care of my parents when they get older. And then you see, like, hopefully they have a good retirement or a good, nursing home. I hate to say it that way, like, pension or
Yeah.
something of that sort. So it's almost to where I think that you're taking care of people, but
Yeah.
it's almost like, okay, mom and dad, you got to take care of yourself as best you could because we got to try to take care of ourselves as best as we can. And so I think it's almost like expected, like, oh, and in my culture, like part of my culture, like Korean culture, it's like, it's multi-generational, like,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
like Rodrigo's, and maybe yours too, but I see a breakdown of that happening here in the United States. Like it's just like everybody fend for themselves.
This is something interesting that I've also noticed about that dynamic that you're mentioning in the US versus in Peru, and it's really opened my eyes up. Um, I have a wonderful, I call her, she's like an auntie. She lives here. She helps me around the
Mm,
house. She's basically
aw.
become mine and the boys' aunt, because like I don't have my mom down here. I don't have that support system. I have my mother-in-law who's here for part of the year, but she's not here all year. But what I've noticed, and this is like in particular, yes, the US tend to end up, like many times, grandparents end up in nursing homes. And I also noticed that, I mean, it's typically like you see a pretty big decline in health for grandparents versus the people that are of the same age here. The average 60-year-old here, I feel like, has the energy of a 40-year-old in the US. And again, chronic disease isn't necessarily as prevalent in a lot of areas here. Now, in Lima itself, yeah, you start to see that decline a lot more, but the older population here is extremely, extremely active. I mean, my husband just
Mm.
did a video with a woman who's 78 years old, and she's still running her stand in the Mercado. This, you just see such a difference in the abilities of the older generations here, because one, a lot of times they don't have a choice but to make money and to work into older age, which obviously isn't always ideal, but it gives them purpose a lot of times here. Maybe they're running family businesses, maybe they're passing it down, maybe they're working in the household with the mom and the grandma. And the grandmas here are, handling the kids and the toddlers too, just like the mom. So
Do-
you see a little bit of a different, I mean, my personal, experience is that I've seen a difference in capability in the older generations here.
I agree. I think that's a really great point, though, Ab, because I mean, they were talking about some statistics. Everybody's been talking about like Dr. Amen and Josh and Dr.
Mhm.
Axon. He was talking about like how many people use like paddle sports, paddleboard, pickleball, things like that. But
Mhm.
I would totally assume there is a studies. I know you've seen those too, about elder generations. And I think that people say, well, I've done my time as a parent, but then you have the grandparents. When you have to go watch a grandson or a grandbaby play soccer, or you're chasing them around, that coordination and that strength that you desire. Purpose has to allude to a person's health as they get older, and I would assume because it gives them joy, and I think that's
Exactly.
probably why you're seeing these individuals like a lady who's been there for over 40, 50 years, most of her life,
Yeah.
cooking soup. that's like one thing I remember when I was in Korea. My my mom's family, they are out in the countryside, and one of
Mhm.
my mom's aunts, they're some are up in their 70s and 80s, and they're out there still like doing farm chores and doing farming, and it's just like, and they take care of the kids, and you're like, man, I'm like, like most people, I'm like, I want to cool my jets, but I would have to ask God that in later in my life, I still want purpose, and I think that's a
Yeah.
really big thing, and I'm glad you're seeing it. I mean, does Luca see, or do you see the difference in Luca? Like, I mean, again, guys, I'm just saying there's differences like in the U.S. and there. I mean, do you think Luca seems happier there, or he just is more
Yeah.
free, or how's he?
I wanna preface with like it's been so interesting to see because again, I love my home country and there are so many problems here politically speaking. Again, we're in South America, so I'm not going to glamorize it in the sense of we deal with extreme gaps here as far as poverty, the wealth gap, and some of the basics, right? Some of the political corruption that goes on here that's a lot more blatant than, for example, the political corruption in the U.S. that can tend to be hidden a lot better, even though we all know it exists. We
No.
I know, right? Yeah. But I mean, some of the stuff here is a lot more blatant and it's very clear that you can see, you can see, a lot more of that because it's out in the open. And again, we're dealing with plenty of issues here ourselves. But as far as, the food and the culture and the community, I would say I went back to the US for a couple months with Luca and Rodrigo, and Luca was having food sensitivities in the few months that we were there. And again, we were there for 2 months, and I was starting to see dark circles develop under Luca's eyes, even though
Oh no.
we felt like we were feeding him his like healthy diet, his normal diet, but there were things that were going on there, like with Luca, that I noticed resolved as soon as we came back here. So there were just, some simple biomarkers that I was like, the food that we were eating or whatever we were doing there seemed to impact him in some way. And of course, children are extremely sensitive. They're developing beings. Like they are going to be the canaries in the coal mine for a lot of things. So, I noticed that about him. I noticed that about my own health too. It was just, a little different. Like I could just feel the food didn't sit the same way, if that kind of makes sense. So when we came back here, he started talking a lot more. As soon as we got back,
Mm.
2 to 3 weeks in, and he started just talking out of nowhere. And the dark circles kind of left. And again, this is so anecdotal, but you mothers know, we know our children. Like we know
Yeah.
when there's something like a
Really.
little off and something's impacting them in some sort of way. So I saw that, and I really did notice that in him. And he just perked right up when we got back. He was eating huge plates of food versus in the US, he'd be more averse to certain things. And he wanted his soups with his
Oh.
we eat chicken feet here, like we suck the
Oh, you
collagen.
do?
Yeah,
Oh
we eat
yeah.
a lot of meat. So
Koreans,
he
we do
like
too.
exactly, yeah. So he was back to his normal eating, his normal routine, lots of collagen, lots of gelatin in his diet, lots of great fiber, lots of great fruit, and it was like a 180, to be honest with you. And I told my mom that, and she was like, yeah, he seems like he's what he just kind of lit right up. And so I really, next time I go back to the US, I want to be even more cognizant of like just kind of what we're eating and stuff, so I don't see that same pattern in him. And and again, we that was one thing I noticed about him. He also speaks Spanish is his first language, which is crazy to me because I'm like, I just now am speaking Spanish for about a year, and I'm like, I've progressed a lot, but hearing my son as his first language is Spanish, and then he understands every single thing in English too, and depending on who he's talking to, he'll switch between English and Spanish. It's pretty wild. Like,
I love it.
it's a
I love
2-year-old
it.
so absorbing so much around him like that. It's been really interesting to experience that as well, which like I said, I
would
never
totally
thought children would their first language would not be English.
Uh, if I had a child, I would definitely have them speak two
Multilingual.
languages. Definitely. And
Yeah.
But when it is an awesome thing when you see your child change that way, because I just had a patient last week, and they had been overseas, and they were away for almost 4 months, and they said baby like cleared up, skin color cleared up, rashes went away. Literally after 3 days here, the
Had
stuff
to.
they dealt with before it came back, and they're asking what, and I'm like, I mean, I can get an idea, like maybe this is it. But one of the things that shows up, I know it could be different things. It could be EMS, could be air quality.
Totally.
But it does alarm me that when somebody lands in the U.S., like some of these dark circles, like the kidneys are getting
like
attacked
that.
somehow.
I would
But
agree.
it makes my heart feel good when you're feeding them soups, because one of the things I love when in Korean culture we eat like soup with a soybean paste, and we put like gochujang, like hot red pepper paste in there, and you mix it and put like vegetables. Like literally, that's like my favorite food. Like I literally like
that sounds
think about
delicious.
it. It's so good. So I love this is like a travel channel. When you go there, you get you see the family dynamics. You have a stronger family unit. There is the Western culture coming in. Mm-hmm. You could see like there's some sickness in the rise. Mm-hmm. Emotionally, though, let's say you have more support. You see your son speaking 2 languages. What has it done to your heart? How do you feel like emotionally?
So much more calm in my nervous system. That's one thing that's healed for me now. Because I know that my son is in good hands with people who are so maternal in nature and have raised so many kids of their own. So I'm learning from the people around me how to parent as well, which I think is so valuable, because sometimes when we're so isolated as parents, and I think that that's one thing that's just so hard sometimes in Western culture, is when you're isolated as parents, just doing it, the work, the 2 of you, and again, this isn't for everyone. I've learned so much from my mom and stuff, but it's in the day-to-day when you're around women who have raised 6 kids, have 10 grandkids. And my suegra, she has 3 boys and now obviously 2 grandsons. You just pick up so much maternal wisdom from the women around you, and it just makes you calm in nature. Like you're like, oh, that's how I'm supposed to do it. Oh, that's how I get him to calm down. Oh, that's how I explain that thing, or that's how we teach him how to do that, And so for my heart, it's just like really full, because I feel like I'm not doing it alone. And that, again, it's improved my mental health, because my first year and a half with Luca, or a year and some change with Luca, I was completely by myself most of the time. With my husband, of course, who's extremely helpful. Thank God he's a chef, because again, we've never had to worry about food in our house. But I was by myself, figuring out motherhood, which is so hard in and of itself, to just, figure out the basics of how do I breastfeed? How do I this? He's crying, So the second time around has been kind of like a breath of, hey, relax. There's somebody here who has raised 6 kids and another woman who's raised 3 kids, and they know how to help you. And be so open to their help, because a lot of times they have, so my, for example, my suegra, she's Chinese. So my husband is partially Chinese, and she brings a lot of the ancient Chinese traditional medicine into the house, and she doesn't even know it, I don't think. So she, after postpartum, for example, she's like, you cannot walk on the floor without socks on. Where are your pantuflas? Which are where are your slippers? So she brings that knowledge, and it's just very maternal. So not only sometimes are they mothering, helping me mother my kids, but they're also mothering me too, which is, really, I don't know. It just makes you feel not so alone in that.
Yeah, that's with the abandonment. Okay, not abandonment. Maybe that's a harsh word, but I think that one thing that I've seen with patients, isolated. Yeah, like when you see mothers who are struggling, and family where there's postpartum depression, and understand there's a huge biochemical aspect of that. I understand. But I do believe that there could be a portion of it being isolation, because here in the States, I believe this, because you and I know a lot of people are saying, there's literally a doula center right near my office, and then one of the things that they say that individuals face is when they say, well, you just have to learn, you just have to figure it out. Like a mother could tell their kid, they just have to figure it out. And I understand that learning, but I think your heart would feel full and more supported, and people would be happier, maybe less postpartum depression in that area, because you actually go, I got some people that can actually take over for me when I need a break. I think it's really important.
Yeah, because the mental load of postpartum is extensive. It's the hardest hormone crescendo and decline you'll ever experience in your adult life as a woman, right? So you're navigating that with a child who is relying 100% of its food on, it's relying 100% on you. And you're trying to navigate that as a first-time mom. That is just overwhelming, So yeah, having that support system is, and there are people for example, in New York City, people are paying for good money for that now. So now in New York City, for example, a couple of my friends have done it. They have postpartum hotels, okay? And you literally go to the hotel with your significant other. You have nurses and maids coming in to help you take care of the baby, maybe to give it a bottle to this or that. Again, if you're breastfeeding exclusively, obviously it's 100% relying on you, but you have extra sets of hands there. Maybe they bring in masseuses, and it's an entire postpartum experience that is catered to a woman. And it's based on traditional Asian culture. It's sitting the 40 days, or depending on how long you do it, sitting for 2 weeks, which is very, very important to do as a postpartum in in a lot of the Asian cultures, this, the whole idea is that you are not getting out of the bed for the first week. And then you're slowly getting out just to go out, to go do a few things here and there the second week. And it kind of just, your capacity slowly increases as you stop bleeding, as your uterus begins to heal. But it's so important those 40 days essentially to be, sitting. And so you have these women typically in Asian cultures who all come into town to fully support the mother in that time period. So they recreated essentially that same experience, but it's extremely expensive. It's for the rich of the rich, the most elite people in New York City can afford this, right? Tens of thousands of dollars to do it for a couple of weeks. I think it's I heard, I can't remember what the exact price was, but it was extremely expensive. Again, it is a little bit more luxurious than probably a lot of women experience postpartum, but it's that concept that they took and just recreated it for the elite in postpartum. Don't necessarily have support systems, right? So it's really interesting when you see that.
I do think it's I'm not saying I ever thought about that, but I think we talked about this a while back. I always told some of my colleagues, I said, I wish they created a clinic or some kind of area that Chinese medicine, I said, where it's just based on the mother who just had a daughter or a son, because it is just as important as taking a prenatal. It is just as important as doing something before. And I'm just so glad to hear this, that they're doing it now. And you could experience it. You should make a big one in Peru and just.
I know. Well, they don't even need it as much as us, I would say, in the U.S. because they've got these built-in support.
Yeah, they got everybody there. Yeah.
They don't need it as much.
I still got to talk to you. Yeah. So put in the big city, maybe they have that.
Exactly.
It'd be so fun. I think that.
I would say that's why, you see birth rates declining, right? That's a big facet of it, is the lack of support. You're if I'm going to have a child, and even two, I'm completely on my own. That level of isolation is, you can only handle, so much. I applaud women who do it all. I realized quickly that I couldn't on my own without sacrificing myself heavily. And losing myself, my mental health, everything, right? The women that do it are extremely strong. And it's amazing how resilient women are. And when we have to do something, we do it. But it's also, it's also, the biggest crux of the US and the postpartum, and how poorly we handle postpartum, for not only just in our like cultural and like our family units, but also corporations who give only a couple weeks, couple months postpartum. Maybe the men aren't even getting any time off to adjust and acclimate the family that doesn't have necessarily a support system. It's, it's wildly different than what you see in Europe, even like Europe. My one friend got 8 months off postpartum. They're like,
Wow.
8 months.
I
It's
think
like,
that's
okay.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's completely different in different parts. So yeah.
Yeah, I would truly assume that when you know that you see individuals like, let me backtrack. There is a really high incidence of individuals like ladies who eventually like develop osteoporosis or bone issues as they get older because they wouldn't make the correlation, but you and I would see it, but a lot of those individuals as they get older, like 50s and 60s, and many of those individuals in some of the different studies would say that they all had kidney issues. And when you read it, I just think kidneys, we know they'll say fear, but one of the biggest aspects, like in the Chinese medicine world, is kidneys have to do with the fears of not just being afraid of somebody, but afraid of that you don't belong or you feel like you're out of place or I don't want to be a bother. And so there becomes this fear that if you're going to be alone, if you're going to be a bother to somebody else, a lot of the individuals, like a lot of single mothers or mothers who had to do it on their own, will have a lot of incidents of osteoporosis because the kidneys balance the amount of minerals that go in and out of the bone. So you'll see these individuals who have osteoporosis later is because they worked hard. Like they worked hard for their children, and they are the ones that I feel so hard for them because I can't tell you how many times mothers come in and they've had things like that, and you ask them about their past, and they're like, oh, yeah, I had to do this, on my own for a long time. And they were just afraid the whole time. And my heart goes out to them. And then you start reading studies about it. It's pretty amazing that can happen.
I have one up actually because last year I made a post about lactation and maternal bone mineral density because my first pregnancy or my first postpartum with Luca after a year, I was so depleted. Like I could just feel it in my body. I have the dark circles under my eyes from, I think, just lack of sleep and obviously like nursing around the clock with Alessio, but I'm taking kidney suet now. I'm taking kidney as a part of like my postpartum supplementation. I'll take any of the recommendations you have, but I made this post about lactation and maternal bone mineral density. And they said that typically during lactation, 4 to 7% of bone loss occurs in the lumbar spine and femoral neck, which is typically reversed about 1 year after weaning. So it made me start thinking, I was like, well, a lot of women are not necessarily getting the minerals that they need. They're not constantly drinking. They're not, getting the right ratios of sodium to potassium to magnesium to all this, right? And that's why they say for every kid you have, you're going to lose a tooth because typically a lot of times it'll leach out of the teeth first. And then also, the lumbar spine, which is where we tend to overcompensate the most in our posture when we're constantly breastfeeding and carrying around babies. That like lower spine just takes such a big hit. But I was like thinking about it and I was like, I wonder, what the emotional correlation of that is, and why is it that we also see like some women are able to have 6-7 kids and it seems like it hasn't affected them at all in any way, and then we see one woman after one baby and she's like, I am struggling, so, and that's a really big interesting part of it is what you just said, the kidneys and that emotional correlation to I don't know. And especially probably felt in first time moms, even more so than anything else.
Yeah, I think it's so important because I like our conversations, like it's going around the world. I love it. It's like we're talking about all aspects of it because, truly family units, feeling supported, how it affects your personal health, and you seeing your own health being encouraged and strengthened by what you eat and what you're going through there in a different culture. So, Abby, like we're going through your cycles of life now. So you're seeing that there's a stronger family unit. You have better food sources for your body type. Children are happier. You feel more supported. Overall, that sense of isolation has been reduced. So you're starting to see the structural issues. Your physical aspects are doing really well. do you see any changes? I don't want to get, too technical, but I mean, I'm asking, do you see, like hormonally, like since you've changed your food and your lifestyle, your stress, are you hormonally feeling better? Like you recovered better after the second child while you're down there?
Yes. Okay, let's talk about this because you were somebody that I had talked so much about with this. I had chronic acne. I could not, for the life of me, get rid of. I talked to you so many times about it. I had it around the jawline, the classic, on the cheeks, like had some gut dysregulation. I mean, I just had gut dysbiosis. You and I had talked about a parasite in my colon. Like, we went through it all. We went through it all. And I could not, for the life of me, get rid of my acne. Okay. And while I was traveling in Europe and back in the US, like I would get these flare ups, like it would start to get better in Peru. And then I'd go back to the US, I'd go back to Europe, and I would get these flare ups out of nowhere that it would just flare up again. Okay. I have been back in Peru since July. Okay. Or excuse me, not July. I've been back in Peru since January. So I've been here for going on like 5 to 6 months. And my hormonal acne is completely gone. Now, you could say, oh, Abby, like, you could say, oh, Abby, that's because you were pregnant, or, oh, Abby, this or that. And I'm like, okay, well, here's what I noticed. I was justifying my acne in every single phase because I would be postpartum and I'd having acne and I would just feel like super high cortisol, high stress, this and that, which obviously like is the antagonist for things like progesterone, right? So I just was living in this like high cortisol state for a couple of years, not fully addressing the root cause of the fact that I needed to be rooted in one place and to stop traveling and to stop trying to do a million things and be everything to everybody. And it didn't matter how many supplements I introduced. It didn't matter how many different things I tried. Now, one thing that did actually help me move the needle quite significantly was working with my circadian rhythm. So getting out in the morning sunlight, being in sunlight during the day for that UV, and then also red light therapy helped. But it wasn't like the thing that essentially like kind of put the final, it was kind of just like a final touch almost. What helped was me being grounded, me being rooted, having support, being able to take a deep breath and say, hey, I don't have to do everything right now. And also getting out of that like overconsumption hustle culture of the US really did also impact me quite a bit as far as healing. And so now I've been here 6 months. I've been able to actively focus on my food and eating broths and just taking things a little bit slower. And even though I went through pregnancy, I had Alessio in March. Okay. So at the end of pregnancy, my skin was pretty much cleared up for the most part. And I was like, maybe it's just because of pregnancy. And then it carried on into postpartum. And now I'm over 2 months, I'm 2 months postpartum and I've got the same skin. Nothing's changed. Minus the fact that I have dark circles. And, if I get even the slightest bit dehydrated, have some serious fine lines and wrinkles. But otherwise, my skin itself has not necessarily had the flare-ups, hasn't changed, So it tells me that I'm way more balanced than I was. And so I don't know if you have insight on that, but I mean, again, coming from somebody who always justified it with my cycles or, oh, it's because I'm pregnant. Oh, it's because I'm postpartum. Oh, it's because of this, that. I've done it pregnant and postpartum and my skin hasn't changed. So I'm like, okay, much more balanced, probably not necessarily dealing with the same high cortisol, not necessarily seeing the same, stress and fluctuations. So that's one thing. That has been a big thing in my health that I dealt with for so long.
Yeah, it's like whenever you've dealt with it for so long, when you look into culturally, I will say with reduction of stress, I've had a lot of patients that have moved to different countries. And like when you're in a cleaner environment, I believe, or a place that you can ground more. And I think people would just think that we're using that and you and I as like bywords. I'm like, not at all. if you are in an environment where you can ground well, like when there's a lot of good magnetics within the earth, a lot of good, I'm serious, like vibrational patterns that come from stones and from rocks in those areas, and probably a lot of healing mechanisms. I do correlate that with your stress levels being reduced, because I believe there's certain types of energetic patterns are in different countries possibly. I wonder, and this is not me not knowing this, Abby, I'm just wondering, because when people come back here, you've done everything, your acne was, break out and have these surges. I sometimes assume that there could be like these surges, like the energy within even the dirt. There's energy that's in the air. Things that are in the United States, there's changes in culture. There's this one book I have in my car, and it's called Crazy Like Us. Okay. And I got to show you I'll send it to you when I get to the car, but it talks about the not energetic patterns. It talks about the infection in different parts of the world and how they're correlated with certain conditions by their latitude and longitude. Now, what they're saying is like the mental aspect of people would encourage the development of some of these infections and their symptomatology. So I'm just saying that being in a less stressful situation, having more of a family orientation, I believe all the bacteria in your gut, all the fungus in the gut, the good ones are calm. I guarantee you, if your gut feels stressed, it's going to run. It's going to fight. Like, I don't feel comfortable here. I'm going to run, and I'm going to produce more toxins. I'm going to have more breakouts. I've thought about that with you, Abby. I'm like, it has to be that, because things are on the defense when they're in an environment they don't like. What do you think?
Well, let me tell you what this environment is like here, because, okay, so we live like a 5-minute walk to the ocean. So we have the Pacific Ocean here. So we have the ozone, right? And then we also have, a completely different frequency from the ocean, right? Like everything is you can explain that science so much better than I can. But I lived on the Gulf in Florida. So I was like, oh, well, but we're close to the ocean. And it's a strong ocean. We have huge waves. Like sometimes it looks like we're in South Africa, how big the waves are. And in the area I live in, okay, the only thing that reads on my phone is 3G and sometimes LTE, okay? Because down here in this part that we're at, there's no 5G yet. We're pretty removed from the main. So we don't have those towers anywhere in sight. And normally the only thing that my phone is reading half the time, I can walk into most of my bedrooms. And the reason I had to move from my bedroom is because we have such bad signal. Like nobody ever gets service in our bedroom and the bedroom downstairs. And that's another factor of this is like, okay, I know for a fact that we do not have those towers here because we are in definitely a much more like kind of secluded spot. It's a little bit strange from the center of Lima. And we're by the ocean, and, we're always out in the garden barefoot. It's mostly outdoor living, like where we are right now, because of the mild climate we see all year. So we're outside, getting all spectrums of UV light, and light in general from, sunrise to sunset. That's just completely different than what I've been accustomed to in the US, and same with my children. My son, and people think I'm crazy because we don't do a lot of the bright lights at night in our house. Like we have the low amber lights, or we'll just kind of go to sleep a little after the sun goes down. My son last night was in bed by 6:30 and he's 2. People think I'm crazy when I tell them that, but I'm like, we go to bed when the sun goes down and we get up when the sun gets up. And that is really how that is completely how we've worked this entire time being here. So I will tell people that my son is usually in bed by like 6:37, and that's not every night. Like, let's be clear. Sometimes it's like, pushing 7:38, but they're like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean? Just because we tend to dim the lights and kind of get into this like slow routine by that time of night where he's like literally like, okay, la luna es afuera, like the moon is outside, it's time to go to bed, and he does, So yeah, there's a completely different rhythm as far as like routine and coinciding with probably like the circadian biology factor. And I follow a lot of like Dr. Jack Cruz's stuff and also a lot of Ray Peat's stuff as well.
Well, they get some really great, cool stuff. Do you see? Okay, I know that we're talking about this on the podcast. We're I think it was Jack Cruz, and he did a conversation with Casey Means' brother, I think, one
Yep.
time.
I watched that.
Was that Jack Cruz? And
Yes. He was like going after them. Kind of.
I didn't hear all of it, but I saw a clip and I was like, "Oh, what's going on?"
Yes. Oh yes. It's pretty. He is a fascinating character, to say the least. But I feel like he is so on to. He was talking about the other day, like I follow him on. I have a subscription to his Patreon because he writes these exceptional blogs. Like, you'd probably really appreciate them. So I have a subscription to his Patreon, and he is just talking about all sorts of crazy concepts of how energetic melanin is and how it's being used in computer chips right now. He is just broaching topics that nobody else is really talking about besides, I would say the circadian biology, quantum health space on Twitter. And he's kind of like spearheading it. His stuff is absolutely fascinating when you listen to it.
I got to read it. Maybe send me an article.
I'll send you a few. Yeah. You would really, I think you would really appreciate some of the stuff that he's been putting out there recently. It's extremely, I would say, fringe for a lot of people who don't understand how light works. But he even talked about like Ozempic being this operation that the government really wanted to implement, and how a lot of people are becoming extremely obese because of light pollution. And he calls it being light poisoned. And, talking about how skin cancers are actually getting heavily correlated with things like being under LED lights all day long. So he's broaching topics I think a lot of people are not talking about, which is really fascinating.
I like to hear, and even though anybody that's out there listening would say, well, because I don't know a ton of his, I've read some things, and I've listened to some things, but I'm with you. I like to listen to different viewpoints and see what they say when they talk about light poisoning, because you and I see it quite a bit in the office, especially the type of work I'm doing. It's just hard. Like, now I see so many different types of toxicities, and I'm not saying I found all these things. Oh no, I'm not saying anything I do is special. It's just you find these symptoms and you go, like you just said, like some people literally get sick when they go to an area where they have different types of light, or they go into a different environment. I'm like, those things are studied. There's no denying stuff like that studied. It has to be.
Exactly. And they just did a study too that women are way more sensitive to blue light than men. So women are much more impacted, more impacted by blue light than men are. So it's even more so important for women to avoid blue light than men. And that, I think, it also has to do with just because we also have our cycles of our hormones and just how it's implicated hormonally speaking. I think that's probably where the study went. But yeah, it's crazy.
We could keep talking about this app. I mean, we could go. This would be a whole other podcast. We can go into that. But I would love to, honestly.
Yeah, we could go down that. There's so many rabbit trails.
That route. But I mean, this has been really good, Ab. I'm glad we got to catch up, and I think people out there are starting to see like different cultures. That's what this podcast I want to talk about. Maybe on the title for the show producer, be like, this is about like different lifestyle, different environments. How does it affect your health of a mother? Man, it's so good to catch up. I know we don't get to see each other and talk that much. And tell Rodrigo, that I said hello.
I'll give him a hug for you. I'm sure he'll be excited to hear. That we got to chat and catch up. And when you're good food, you need to come down to Peru.
I'll come down. I will. I got to talk to Dave, but I'll literally, I really will, with all the things going on in my world. But it's starting to level up a bit. But okay. I want people to know more about you. We always do this. I have two quick questions. This is one thing. It's like, I always ask my guests, what is one thing that somebody, when they meet you, would not know about you? Like, is there something that you don't tell anybody and they'd be like, what, Abby? What? And what about you that nobody would know?
Ooh, oh my gosh. Well, okay. I think it's crazy when people meet me now because I'm living in such a unique place for my, if somebody were to meet me in the US on the street, they'd be like, oh, she's a green guy, like she's just like a normal person. And then if I tell them, oh yeah, I live in Peru, I think they'd be like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean? You know, that like now when I have conversations with people in the US and I tell them that, like, that's a shock factor for them. They're like, really? And your kid was born in Peru? You did a home birth in Peru? That's crazy. But I guess, I don't know. I mean, I run a clothing company. That's like a lot of fun. You know,
You need to get into that like more. It's like organic. I love
that's like fun, and that's like completely irrelevant to anything I've ever done in the past. But it's so much fun that I'm like, oh, you know, it's great fun, and I have a good time doing it. And we love organic cotton, so why not?
I mean, so you run the clothing company. You're in Peru. What's your favorite music?
I love Goth Babe. And that name sounds like, I feel like so many people would be like, what? No, it's amazing. Like California housey. They're like an amazing California, like kind of housey group that also brings great instrumentals in. And they have a really great, like kind of like, they're just amazing. I love Goth Babe. Sounds really strange to anybody listening. They're like, who the heck is that artist? Like, you have to look it up to see. You'd probably love it if you heard it, you know?
I'll do it. I'll figure it out.
Very strange, like name, but a great genre.
I love it. Goth Babe. I mean, truly. So everybody out there, take it and give it a listen. And then, tell us about your social media page and your website, how they can get a hold of you.
Oh, yeah. It's just Abi Fernandini. I spell my name a little weird, ABI, and then Fernandini, Fernandini. It's Italian. And, I'm there. And I love to hang out with my friends, and we talk about all the fun things, and we giggle, and we talk about health stuff. And we have a good time, and lots of stuff around motherhood. And my clothing company is Be Well Fitted, and that's it. That's where you find me. Those are the two places you find me.
I think that everybody out there, when you reach out to Abi and you see her content, one thing I really appreciate is that you always give your good introspective ideas about all things motherhood. Because there's so many people out there that say, I want to live organically, I want to live like health, but you give good insight into it. And we really appreciate it. So I was telling the producer, like, we need to get her to talk more about like motherhood, because you have such good insight into that. But, everybody out there, me and Abi are friends, and Rodrigo, and I need to come down there. And I hope everybody got a good listen to this. And maybe some people out there will go down to Peru, and your husband makes the best looking ceviche, or is that right? Like some stuff. Yeah, I mean, I watch his stuff and I'm like, I'm good if I make a grilled cheese sandwich, but this guy is just crushing some of the stuff. So
gotta come down.
Thank you so much for being on here with me. I miss you so much. All right. I really appreciate it. Oh, it's going to be so good. It's going to be so good. And everybody check out Abi, and let me know what you guys think. And if you guys like this kind of info, remember, like and subscribe. If you know anybody that's a prospective mother, a mother that wants to live organically, or wants to know about some insight about living in another culture, and maybe it's better for your health, send this to them. And from all of us here at the Angel Health Podcast, thank you so much. Thank you, Abi, for being with me today.
Thanks for having me. As always, love to be here.